week 6 of the COSC 1316. Congratulations to all the people that have submitted their exams. The majority of you all that have submitted it have had high marks, and I congratulate you guys for that. Also, I have received a high number of people that have submitted their labs. I have not seen any failing grades other than the people that did not submit anything. I understand. I deliberately have uh, the window closed so that I can identify people that are going to be turning them late. So I've graded the ones that have submitted, that you guys turn in on time. If you have failed to submit, I will still allow y'all now to be able to submit them, and I will start deducting 10 points for each week that we're behind. So if you're in week 6, I'm sorry, when week 5, and you have not turned it in, the highest grade you'll be making is a 90. So that's if everything in the rubric has been uh, been accounted for. And on week 4, the highest grade will be an 80. The week 3, 70. Week 2, so forth. That's how I'll be handling late work assignments from now on. Also, um, if you have not completed the submitting URLs, if you're having issues with your URL, please reach out. I know I had a gentleman reach out, and then we fixed the URL situation, and we got the person to be able to submit their assignments through using their URL. Remember, no URL. If you turned in the index page only, the highest grade you'll be able to make is a 70 on the assignments. Very important that you start submitting the URLs if you have not done so in previous assignments. Okay, so we're going to go into week 6 of our reading lecture. We're going to touch base again on lesson 3. Lesson 3, I had a reading assignment for you guys just to read. To get familiar with CSS, learn how it works. Just a brief overview. I wasn't quizzing you guys on any of this, but we will revisit. The reason for that is if you have not grasped the concept of what it is, we understand we've been using inline cascading style sheets or CSS and code in HTML. This time from here on, we'll be using CSS style sheets or external CSS for future coding in our week 6 assignment and thereon. So we're going to be separating all our inline code that we've been using in regards to styling into a CSS page. And I'll be showing you guys on the second video in more in depth of what I'm going to be requiring or requesting for this upcoming assignment. It's going to be lots of fun. All right. So just a basic overview of our, okay, let me see if I can get there we go, my planner. Explaining the purpose of CSS, okay, is basically to declutter HTML. This allows to be more information to be a little more accessible. Also, we mentioned how if you want to make a multitude of pages all uniform, it is easier to manipulate those elements through one solid page that has all your code, and it can be universally um, transmitted across multiple pages in your website. So it's easier in the long run when you're creating multiple pages. Let's see what else we talked about. We're going to be talking about syntax and including the selectors, properties, and values. Okay, that one's going to be a little reaching, but bear with me. May have to do additional readings for how to identify selectors and classes on your code. And the first assignment will be to add uh, additional attributes to divs and your headers and your footers all across a multitude of pages. So we'll talk about that when we come to that bridge. All right. So going over the book real quick. Okay. This is just to give you an idea of what it should be doing, and as you can see, there's not much of a difference that when you what all you've already learned doing with CSS styling. But if you look a little bit further, you'll see that they've stripped the HTML and have all your attribute coding in one page. So now we're going to be creating a page ending in .css. We'll be naming them accordingly and then be using them in reference in an HTML document. So coding in CSS is very much, it has similarities and it has its distinctions. The similarity is that you're going to be using the tags that you are identifying elements in your HTML. And this is not a very good um, idea of what we'll be using, but just give you like an overview. Since we have one of these tags that's very identifiable is your body tag, we're going to be using curly braces to open up a statement or a series of statements. We're going to be using semicolons to complete a statement, just like Java, just like C Sharp, any of those other programming languages where you have a set uh, rule where you must have a closing tag if you want to complete when you complete a statement. This follows the same type of formatting the structure. So you see a lot of these, like you want to incorporate some of the particular colors and attributes. This is not a very good example of using black in the in the body tag, but you put font color or background color, and you start identifying some of those, and then it'll be a little bit more familiar. Um, we see here another very familiar tag. Notably, you'll see this in the less than, greater than, or greater than, less than tag, right? To identify the element in your page as anything in H1. So now we are separating those attributes and we are being more specific. We are describing what we want to see exactly. Anytime you create a tag that's in H1 type, is going to follow these rules. So if you have a multitude of H1 tags spread out through your web page, they're all going to be similar as to what you said here. Okay. We'll talk about separators in just a little bit, but I wanted to show you guys prior to um, a little bit more in depth of our basic um, CSS code and for your upcoming assignments, but just to be familiar with the reasoning of using these type of structure. Okay, so we're hovering over our body tag, and you can notably see that there's those your tags. So when you're creating your code and you have your HTML editor, it'll be sometimes be wise to use some of these uh, I call them God, my mind escapes me. These like an autocorrect, right? So if you want to firmly state that in your body tag, it clearly identifies it as a body tag. So when you're writing it down or typing it down, it specifically references any and all tags with this opening statement, and therefore all these elements or attributes follow through to and tie it to that tag, right? So we go forth and we can clearly identify any tag in your code in HTML and apply separate attributes. So we're mentioning background color set in the header, and it directly links it and points it to the tag that's going to be used in your HTML. So we follow through down, and some of the basic generic ones are here listed. We hover over that. So any and all divs, generic divs, not labeled divs, will be following this particular set of rules that you set forth. Um, we mentioned something called selectors. I like to call them as a class. Whenever we create a more identifiable element. For instance, we're gonna have a multitude of divs, you know, set throughout your web pages. Like let's just say div 1, div 2, div 3, div 4, div 10, etc. Um, it'll be wiser if we're going to have a variation of the same tag to create something called a selector or adding a class. Um, there's going to be a two-part ordeal that we're going to have to reprogram ourselves to accommodate to this particular um, new set of formatting tools. Um, so on our back end, we are identifying an element in your HTML code that is now set by an identifying marker called the class. So in our backend on the CSS, we're going to use a dot to set the identifiable element class. And we're going to, like I mentioned before, if we were to have a div that's going to be labeled div class, you know, number 1, or div class 2, div class 3, we're going to be setting it with a dot, and then of course your div class name. And I will be showing you that on the second part of this series. Okay. So this is going to be this is the actual code we're going to be using for your assignment. Let me move this out of the way. You know, you can't see that, but I'm going to close that. Week 6 assignment. Alright, we're going to go directly, and I'm going to use a week 6 assignment as a prime example of your divs that's going to be created, and your selectors, how they're going to be implemented. And in one section of the header, I created a div class, but I wanted to identify that as part of our menu bar. So I have an element in my header tag that is actually a button. Just like you create a menu bar, you created a menu bar with in your week 4 assignment. I am specifically identifying this particular div, and I'm going to label it menu bar. Right. So that's also one of your element tags that we can identify it. So we looked at in CSS just a little while ago. If you need to, we can rewind it, but we're going to be using class identification markers, and even possibly ID markers in our additional classes for separating element tags. So taking on what we're going to be using to identify. We're gonna create an ID. We're gonna personalize it, but make sure you are aware of how your naming conventions are all lower cases, no spaces in between. If you are going to use spaces, but use a hyphen and etc. So this pretty much is going to. We're not going to be using the styling as you've seen before, but you will be using this identification markers to be able to um, set the CSS code. Um, let's go back to the CSS code. Okay, so we have a menu bar, and I wanted the color in the menu bar to be a particular color. Okay, menu bar. I set the menu bar to be black. I set the menu bar padding on the button itself, and so what I did on the CSS page now is denoted by our front end in HTML. So week 6 assignment, and I kind of gave it away. We're gonna do a 3-page assignment, and you're gonna say, "Oh wow, well 3 pages is a lot," but the reasoning behind that is because um, it's just not much different of what you've done before in the past. See, we've gone to the second page. Let me just go back real quick. First page, I'm gonna have you guys create div classes, divide them or identify them, preferably by date, as our CSS coded on the back end. There you go. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're identifying all our div element ID by ID. Okay, so we have an ID, 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 element ID. Okay, and then we're going to I deliberately, this does not reflecting our assignment the way it should look, but this is so that you guys can figure out what you need to do. There's an additional step here that you need to set in. I'm not, of course, I'm not going to give away the answer there. If you need to follow the W3 schools or the very own videos that are provided in the, I believe it's chapter 3 of the video of your assignments. And also you can gain practice using the videos or the homework assignments that are posted also on your along with the book. Remember, they're not required, but if you want to follow through with them, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so where were we? All right, so we're looking at the front end, and we follow through to the second page, and it follows very much just about the same scheme on the second page and just about the same scheme on the third page. And this is what I want to denote. There's nothing else other than just a few text on that third page, but the point of it will be that CSS is done in one single page, and as long as you declare it in your HTML code, it's going to follow through and bleed into any of the additional pages that are also tied into it. And that's the whole purpose of creating these pages and this week's assignment. All right, so let's go back to the book real quick. And like I mentioned before, if you have any issues, and this is just basically a reiteration of what we just went over. Okay, and this is a reiteration also of the inline stuff and how to declare it in your CSS. So there's not much change. You possibly looks a little bit familiar already. And I believe it's chapter 8 and chapter 9 of the attribute section. Okay, here you can see a subheader, P class, and this is a little bit harder to explain, but you can make subclasses of particular elements that are not main tags, like your body tag, your header tag, etc. A P class is, of course, a paragraph. So if you want to create an additional style to the paragraph tag, you can do so by denoting it and creating a new class for it or subclass. It's a little weird, but you start getting the hang of it later on when you start wanting to make these fine, um, subtle um, statements in your code. I'm sorry, in your front end, and you want to make it look really pop out and just go wild with some of these additional attributes that you can incorporate. Okay. Okay. So this is another thing that we just went over. This will be part of your assignment and using ID classes for your tags. So we mentioned that we were using div tags. So here is very similar to what you're using is your p tags, but you're creating an ID. So the reasoning behind that, please follow through on page 70 and possibly the next 2 or 3 pages, and so you can get a better understanding of how ID tags work for your elements. Okay, so we mentioned it was a little short and sweet, but it's a lot of information and a lot of having to clearly just do a complete 180 and walk away from inline styles. But the same token, everything you learn in inline styles um, has to be converted over into CSS and styling sheets. All right. So next we're going to be looking into chapter 10 and chapter 11. And it's also just how can I say, it's just more in-depth information of what we've already gone through. And this very much here designates how we're going to be using these divs on your next assignment. And on the instructional video, well, we'll be going more in depth. But it's very important that you start also taking note from this particular chapter and this particular section, because this will directly be used in your next assignment. So the CSS box model and how to set anything and everything within a div in this particular case. And we're going to use those divs in this upcoming assignment, as you've mentioned, as you've seen before. Here we're going to identify them as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm going to have an array of divs, and we're going to be styling each one of those. It's going to be fun, but you're going to get the whole works as far as how to incorporate div classes. All right, or div ID tags. So we mentioned on our CSS tags, I'm sorry, our CSS style sheet, how to create a CSS code. And how to set colors. And how to apply additional formatting. For instance, if you want the box itself to be a certain size, they're going by pixels. Very much different from font sizes, which follow through as points and PT. This is through pixels. This is actually um, how the resolution on your screen should appear. You can also use percentages, but for the time being, please use pixels to denote the size of your divs or your content boxes. So, chapter 10, very, very important stuff right here, what we're looking at. All right, this is kind of telling us of using in in style CSS. Yes, in style CSS, but we're gonna separate this. This will no longer be used in our HTML code, and explicitly we'll be looking into that in your HTML document that you're gonna be submitting, your zip file. This inline styles no longer be used, although this code is actual CSS code will be placed in your CSS document. So this exactly relates to the assignment that we're going to be creating, and I'll reemphasize this on your second video. So this is exactly what we're talking about here when you want to create additional um, divs and you want to identify them by numbers, but we're going to identify ours by days of the week. Okay. So we saw on a combination of both, and this, of course, this is no longer applicable here since we're using a CSS. Div 1, D2, D3, D4, all these will be denoted, but we'll use. See, this is where I fail. Well, not fail, but I deliberately left out the piece of code information on my CSS page to make all these different colors applied. I can't be giving away the answers, so this is your little curveball there. All right. Next. Yeah, we're talking about absolute positioning, your overflows, very important stuff. Inline CSS, once again, we just keep running into that. Very important stuff here. All right, 11, CSS on lesson 11. We'll not be requiring too much from here other than your alignment and your padding and a little bit of the margining just for your ordered lists and your unordered lists on your daily activities for the assignment. So we go through this. We've already gone through ordered lists and unordered lists in the previous assignments, and this just looks as it's a refresher. And remember, folks, this is combining or inline CSS, but it further allows you to use code to format unordered lists and ordered lists, or LI. Okay. So this is fun. This is creating eye-catching attributes to your elements, and I'll be using some of these lists in your upcoming assignment. Image maps. I'm not going to touch any of this just yet. Perhaps the next week's assignment will incorporate images, and you're going to build on your current assignment so that you can start getting familiar with this additional decoding. So overview of 11. Basically, I'll be requesting you all to use lists, and from lesson 10, um, use color, background color, font family, font sizing, padding, margining, and borders for your upcoming assignment. Your quiz is going to be on chapter 3, and I believe the questions on chapter 3 and chapter 10 are very much identical. So as long as you comprehend what's going on in chapter 3 and chapter 10, you should have no problem. 10-question quiz, and we'll be posting that also this week and be due on Saturday. Okay, so once again, chapter 3, just a brief overview once again, a revision. Chapter 10 and chapter 11, uh, everything that we discussed before. Please look into it, and we're going to go ahead and continue now with our assignment video.